things is that art builds communities. That when we invest in the essence and the character and the creative expression, it creates a synergy that everyone wants to engage and be a part of. So I just want to share this very quickly. We're waiting for our other officer to come forward. There's a scripture that talks about King Jehoshaphat. You all know this story about King Jehoshaphat, where there was a battle that he needed to take, but he was concerned about what would it take. Now he's the king, he's in charge. What would it take to win this battle? And the Lord impressed upon him, he said, don't worry about the battle, just send the singers in. And the singers started singing and shifted the atmosphere. And as a result of that atmosphere being shifted, angels imparted and helped them to win the battle. Because art led the way. Art can lead the way. It can help government to create a more healthy, more vibrant community. So I just want to say, well, what does art and government have to do with each other, right? And what does city have to do with art and government? So all of you all are very, very connected in terms of your spheres of influence. And we just want to hear from you. We know time is of the essence. If we bring our fire department head coming, she's going to come down as well. We are videoing this. This is going to go into the annals of the archives of eternity. So we just want you all to give our best shot. Mayor, we thank you. We're going to start with you. And if you can pass the mic, okay?
So my name is Wayne Smith. Some of you know I had the opportunity to serve for about 12 years as the mayor of New Jersey. Served 6 years on the city council, in addition to 12 years as mayor. But many of you don't know that I was born and raised right here in the city of Newark. First school I attended was Hawthorne Avenue School. I lived on Seymour Avenue and Hawthorne Avenue, so I know a little bit about the South Ward. And I'm going to take the opportunity to give you some observations of my life and my view of the South Ward, the White South Ward as you all call it. You have a very high voting district historically. We want to see if those numbers remain the same. I know you have an upcoming election. And I'm going to talk to you about just some rudiments of government, so you know as you go about your task of trying to improve not only the South Ward, but the entire city. And so since Newark is my hometown, I'm going to weigh in, and I'm going to do this as quickly as I can. So I bring to this perspective, having served as a mayor, as a city council member, and I served as president of the Urban Mayors Association of New Jersey, which was all the large city mayors. So I had an opportunity to deal with mayors in this state across the board and their challenges and issues. And my last year as mayor, I got a chance to be the president of the entire New Jersey Conference of Mayors, which was all the mayors in our state. So I'm going to bring that perspective to our discussion. And Mayor Baraka currently holds the position as the president of the New Jersey Urban Mayors. So I held that position for about 7 years in my tenure as mayor. I attended Newark's public schools. I'm a product of Newark. I'm a product of the education system here in the city. And I'm going to start just in my early training days, and some of you who have been around the South Ward long enough will remember some of this. So when I went to Hawthorne Avenue School, which was my first school, we had a boys club right down the street. It is now the home of the National Action Network's Tech Center. But there's a relationship between some of the things that we're talking about in the ward, in the city, in the county, and in the state. And we talk about reentry and incarceration. Because when we had at one time the city, and this is private stuff, this had nothing to do with the government. The boys, when I was growing up, there wasn't no Boys and Girls Club. It was the Boys Club. And then later on, incorporated the Girls Club. But we had a Boys and Girls Club in every part of the city. And there's a relationship when some of those things close and the rate of incarceration and the rate of juvenile delinquency. So as we look at where we're going as a community, we have to look at how we plan for our young people in a very strategic and focused way. Now, for the nonprofits in the room, the city administration has put out a recent call of about $19 million in anti-violence money. So some of you who do that kind of work, and maybe some of that's cultural, because music and arts can play a role in reducing violence in any community. But we need to, my suggestion to the advocates here is to look at all of that. But the other interesting thing I remember about the South Ward is that in my younger years, I went to church at Pleasant Grove Baptist Church, and around the corner, my uncle owned a little candy store. But a lot of those little businesses near his candy store were owned by people just like him who lived in the neighborhood. What I'm suggesting is that your prior panelists just who left the panel is that we have got to figure out ways to invest in our neighborhoods again and bring the kind of, whether it's retail or other businesses, back to those neighborhood corridors if we're going to build back our neighborhoods. So having a solid financial life, as the sister suggested before us, will give us the ability to begin to look at how we invest in our neighborhoods. It has nothing to do with the government yet. I want to talk about the government. But some of those things are private, and my cousin, because we lived on Seymour Avenue, they owned they don't make records anymore, so that tells you how old I am. Had a record shop on Clinton Avenue, right off of Seymour. My aunt and a couple of members of our family own houses on Seymour Avenue. There's a relationship between enterprise and building a city where people have a stake in that city. So we have got to figure out how we become not just homeowners, but how we participate in the commercial. The brother who's the CPA is building infrastructure to show you how you save on your taxes, how you invest and all that. He's right here on Bourbon Street. And then we have to have, as Shafar just talked about, we have to have a communication vehicle to get information out to people. And I'll tell you one thing, with the advent of the demise of newspapers, especially our senior population who may not be as adept at using technology as some of us are, they're not getting the information they used to feed our families because they can't. The paper costs a lot of money today. You know, it ain't a quarter no more. It ain't 15 cents. You know, sometimes it's whether or not somebody gets a sandwich for lunch that costs them a daily newspaper. So the South Ward view becomes a very important vehicle. And then what sustains that view is you got to get the salon ice cream parlor to advertising. You got to get your cleaners to advertising. You know, the places where you have it. The other experience I want to share with you that I've experienced in South Ward is I had the opportunity to come back and chair an organization I went to as a kid called the International Youth Organization. I did that for a few years. And many of you know Carolyn Wallace and Jim Wallace. These historic organizations like that have to be strengthened and fortified, and they do a tremendous amount of work for our rich youth. When I grew up, they served a lot more population, and they're rebuilding. But there's an opportunity there to take one of our historic nonprofits in the city that's located in the South Ward and do some great things. I'm almost finished. Before I go on to the short thing I'm talking about government, we just last track with the economics. So I remember the South Ward when, and I think Yvonne might have been in the central. This Stewart, many people remember Amelia Stewart. They probably know more about John Stewart and John's restaurant than they do about it. Miss Stewart had started out with a little smaller, we used to call them hole in the walls, on Avon. And then she expanded to a nicer dining room place on Lines Avenue. My mother was a cook at both places. My mother, I was the bus boy in those restaurants. And so when you see a seed, you never know how that affects young people. So all my life I've always had a business. Because all the people I ever worked for from a very young age looked like me. So I knew I had the capacity to do that. And I saw models. I worked in a number of stadium takes when I was a very young man. We had stadium takes on Clinton Place and Hawthorne Avenue. Those businesses no longer exist. Most of them have moved to food trucks. But we still eating somewhere. And it might be Popeyes and Burger King and everything else. Why can't we convert some of that money and help some people open up anything? Kai Campbell he acquired Wagner's. But we've got to do more of that, and then when they do that, when they make those kind of investments, we've got to make sure that they're successful by eating there like we ate at Wagner's. And if things are not right, tell them so that they're successful. Last thing I want to remind you, activists, because many of you will be facing elections, you have some important things to do. So I've had the distinction of having served as a mayor and city councilman. So I just want to share, because I don't want to take for granted, because oftentimes we do take for granted what people know or don't know. So I just want to share with you, Yvonne asked me to talk about responsible government. I'm going to reverse that. I'm an old politician, so we don't answer the question, we kind of say what we want to say. So I'm going to talk about the responsibilities of government, not a responsibility. So you should know this. So, in Newark, like Irvington, East Orange, you live under a law called the Faulkner Act. The Faulkner Act means that there are a lot of powers invested in the office of the mayor. Very distinct powers. He gets to hire and fire certain people, sometimes with confirmation and not confirmation from the city council. But the mayor is a strong executive. He appoints people to things. But here's what you don't know. Maybe don't know. The city council has 3 distinct powers by law. The other stuff is, their politics, their personality, what they bring to the job, their community activism. But that's not the job. The job is 3 roles that they apply for. A city councilman under the Fieldman Act has 3 powers: legislate, appropriate, and investigate. What does that mean? When you're a legislator, you make the laws of the city. All the city ordinances is what's in the purview of the city council. They make the laws that govern this city, that are particular to this city. And of course, you've got to get 5 people to make a law in the city. And the mayor doesn't make law. He may propose something to the city council, but he doesn't make law. The city council makes law. Appropriate. A lot of people don't assume this. Appropriate means the budget. Now, we talked about your personal budget. City government runs the same way. You can't spend more than you take in. If you do, you're running irresponsible government. And your sources of revenue capability, they come from the federal government, they can come from the state government, a certain percentage of it comes from your realty or property taxes, and so forth, and fees and other things. But the city council, they set the budget. The mayor can propose a budget. Here's my budget proposal. But it doesn't go anywhere until what? The city council votes on it. They can bend it, they can change it, they can add to it, then they vote on it, and that budget becomes law. So, some people always say, the mayor's where the buck stops. And some things that's true. But in other things, the last power that the city council member has is the power of investigation. Legislate, make the law, appropriate, pass the budget. 3, investigate the government. So the functioning of the government, most functions of the government, every job is set by law. So he has to make sure that the functions of that government, he investigates. Did we collect the taxes right? Did everybody pay them? Who's not paying them? Did they pay the late fee? We ought to know that. Is our garbage trucks functioning? Now, he don't drive the garbage truck. I know some of y'all call the city council, but he don't pick up the garbage. The mayor doesn't pick up the garbage. He has staff and he hires to do all of that. And the council person becomes to make sure as an investigatory body that government is functioning and serving the needs. I'm going to leave it at that. I want to thank you for the opportunity to share. I think that all of this doesn't happen until people get involved. People make a commitment, one, to invest not only their money, but their time and engagement now. As I take my seat, there are some powerful institutions that impact you in the South Ward, but impact this region. And number one is that airport. So you have people here that heard Tim Gaddy talk about the environmental issues and all that, but it's a major economic engine for this region here. And how do we take advantage of it? How do we get some retail stores out of it? How do we get more jobs out of it? That should do it. Now, who runs the airport? It's not the cities, guys. The airport is controlled by the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey. It's a joint venture. But it's run by a board of directors. Do you know who they are? And if you don't, you ought to find out. And you ought to go to some of their meetings. So it's a public body. Now, a lot of the stuff we're doing by Zoom and all that, you can find out. You can participate. And you should. Because your tax dollars pay for all of that. And so, who's serving on it? The reason why I mentioned it, because the governors appoint the board. Just got through a gubernatorial election. Governor Murphy asked for your vote. But none of us asked how many people look like us on the Port Authority. How many minority contracts come out of the Port Authority? How many Newarkers do you hire? How many people from Essex County do you hire? So we have to make sure that as citizens and the demand of our other elected officials, that all of that stuff is talked about and that a forum is developed so that you get the feedback on it. I think that's it. The last thing on city government, there are some things that are delegated to people. You have a planning board. Kim talked about land use. So your planning board, and you're going to hear from a plan. Every city has to develop what they call a master plan. You should know what your city's master plan is. And if you don't, you can read it. It's extensive. They're updated every so often. They're required to be updated by law. In your neighborhood, there's a plan for your neighborhood. If you don't like it, you can start talking about how do you amend it, how do you fix it, how do you change it, all of that. And you have a board of adjustment. All these things are functions of government that impact you beyond the mayor and the city council. Newark is also an urban enterprise zone. So you've got all this American rescue money coming into the city. So you obviously you all want to find out what that's going to be spent on. But the other thing is you're going to have urban enterprise money is returning back. Under Governor Whitman, he took money that went directly to the cities and put it in the state budget. Now they are now returning that money to be spent back in the local communities. So you need to find out if it's Bourbon Street, if it's Chancellor Avenue, what's part of the zone in the South Ward, and how much money is going to be spent out of the urban enterprise zone monies that's coming back. I think that's all I want to say. And thank you very much for the opportunity to participate.
Thank you, Mayor.
Reminder to join us for the South Ward Environmental Alliance First Environmental Summit, Saturday, February 19th, 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. Save the date.